Welcome to Walking with Spirit on the International Angels Network. Today is Thursday, May 10, 2018. I'm your host, Ruth Anderson, and I'm coming to you live from Colorado. Here at International Angels Network, we explore spirituality, angels, spirit guides, our loved ones on the other side, and much more. Our radio podcasts are available to you on Pinterest, Player FM, Castbox, Podtail, Podchaser, Stitcher, and now Google Play. These sites are all easy to use and make it simple to listen to our archive shows. This episode of International Angels Network is sponsored by Holistic Light Rejuvenation Center. For more information, visit holisticrejuvenate.com. Sunday Sturgeon is the founder and CEO of Holistic Light Rejuvenation Center, and she is the sponsor of our Sunday and Thursday radio shows. I'm a spiritual counselor providing individualized, transformational experiences for my clients in conjunction with the spiritual divinity, which includes Divine Mother, Archangels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. I'm also an author and a teacher who loves nothing more than working with and educating others. So each of my radio shows will carry an element of wanting to share what I've learned from my journey of working with the spiritual divinity. In addition, Archangel Michael has asked that I make a point of mentioning that the archangels are willing and interested in connecting with each of us. All we have to do is be open, respectful, and responsive, and simply just ask them to connect with us. For those of you who are new to my show, last year I wrote my personal narrative, One Love, Divine Healing at Open Clinic. It describes the experiences I had during meditation, where I met and worked with Divine Mother, Archangels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. In a place of healing in the ethereal realm, I witnessed and participated in the healing of souls that were still in bodies, and those who had already passed on and were no longer in bodies. Tonight, during our discussion, I will be referencing this place of healing called Open Clinic. Tonight, we are starting our 4-week mini-series on death, dying, and beyond. Tonight's show will be the things I have gleaned from a near-death experience I was able to witness. I would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen. This show is called Walking with Spirit. Walking with Spirit means consciously living in the physical realm with frequent connection to the divinity in the spirit realm and being open to all that they want me to experience. Every day I check in with my guides, Divine Mother, and God, sometimes seeking guidance, sometimes seeking connection, and sometimes seeking their healing abilities. Many days I receive lessons by hearing, seeing, or feeling signs coming in from the energetic realm. Each week I share a story about an experience I had while walking with Spirit. So here's my story from this week. Our 15-year-old cockapoo, Tucker, is nearing the end of his life. He was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, had surgery, and has been on borrowed time ever since. While the cancer has been slow in progressing, he is simply an older dog who has lived his life to his expected age of mortality. For the past 3 months, we have been tiptoeing around the conversation of, when are we going to put Tucker down? About 6 weeks ago, Tucker looked at me with big, tired eyes, and I felt him say, "It's okay, I can go now." Well, I wasn't quite ready for him to go yet, and he wasn't exhibiting that he was in pain, so we didn't make that call. This last Monday, after a rough weekend, we thought our time with Tucker was nearing its end. We called and made an appointment with the veterinarian who will come to the house and lovingly help your dog transition. We put Dr. Ann on the calendar for yesterday at 1 o'clock. On Tuesday, I sat with Tucker and I read his energy. I asked him if he was in pain, and I received yes. I explained about putting him down and being able to sleep in a deep sleep. I asked him if he was ready. I felt a big no. Second-guessing myself, I asked again if he was in pain, and I felt yes. I asked if he was ready and okay with transitioning, and I received no. Then I was shown a pill bottle. Tucker wanted more medicine so he would not feel his arthritis and could rest easily. I thought, okay, fine, if that's all it will take to keep you happy. We put him on more medication, and so far he's hanging in there with us. I love that I was able to read his energy, hear his desires, and be able to make the right decision for him. So tonight, we're going to be talking about near-death experiences, or NDEs. If you have experienced a near-death experience or know of the intimate experiences of someone else who has, please feel free to call in and share what you know. If you want to call in, please call 1-516-453-9162 and make sure to press 1 on your phone if you would like to get into the queue. So let's talk about near-death experiences. According to a 1992 Gallup poll cited by the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, 5% of the nation's population experienced an NDE as of 1992. For the majority of NDEers, the opportunity to witness the reality of life after death was life-changing in a positive way. According to an article from the International Association for Near-Death Studies, NDEs are often profound psycho-spiritual events. Most NDEers report that their experience was dominated by pleasurable feelings such as peace, joy, and bliss. Now, I'll be honest with you here. Occasionally, you'll hear the report where the NDE was not as positive. Some have reported that their experience was dominated by distressing, emotionally painful feelings such as fear, terror, horror, anger, loneliness, isolation, and/or guilt. The percentage of distressing near-death experiences is somewhere between the range of 1 to 15%. As you can imagine, it is hard to get an exact figure on something like that. So what do I personally know about near-death experiences? During meditation, I was given a spiritually transformative event that showed me what it is like to go through that death process without an actual death to my physical being. I am thankful that this is how Spirit chose to teach it to me, without having to go through the physical trauma as well. During meditation, I went to sit at the foot of God to learn more, and he told me to go to Archangel Azrael, who is the angel of death. And Archangel Azrael has told me that he is in attendance at the moment each person transitions. I was immediately cloaked in black, and I was rushed down what looked and felt like a black corridor. I didn't feel like I was ready because I was still sleepy. I didn't have my phone or my laptop to write down or dictate what I was seeing. So I went back to God, and I was gently directed back down the corridor. I still didn't feel ready, and I noticed all of my humanness getting in the way. Why was I so distracted and hesitating? Was I a little fearful? Perhaps. Once again, I left the corridor and I went back to God for the second time. I heard and understand, you want to learn this. So to learn, you need to go back down the corridor. What followed was an interesting time of being aware of myself in a body, being aware of what was happening to me in the spiritual realm, while trying to correctly write down all that I was experiencing. During this time, I was moving and shifting energy within my body. I could tell that I was releasing trapped energy because I kept half yawning, which is what happens when I am moving energy within my body. I started back down the corridor, still robed, completely in black. I felt like I was by myself, as I couldn't see anyone else with me. I was not afraid and somehow knew exactly where to go. Did my familiarity with the black corridor come from previous lifetimes? Perhaps this was not my first time through this end-of-life experience. As I traveled through the darkness, I started seeing pictures as if they were in picture frames. They were coming toward me and passing me on my sides. There were many pictures passing by at a very fast pace, and I could tell that these were pictures of my life, and I was blowing the energy from those pictures as they went by me. The ages of me on the photographs were varied, including infancy to older age. In body, I could feel my heart space, my heart chakra, being triggered. As I continued down the corridor, I saw more of my life pictures as if on the walls next to me as I was passing by them. I wondered, was this what it is like when someone dies and they say that their life is passing before them? I was coming to a very bright white opening at the end of the dark corridor. The entire expanse was white, as high and low, to the right and the left as I could see. I found that it was hard to breathe because it was so stunningly white, and tears came to my eyes as I realized I was being shown what it feels like when someone dies. My heart was triggered, and I was intrigued that this white mass was so white compared to the yellow whiteness of God that I sit with when I feel like I am at the foot of God. I just wanted to soak up all of this white, the feelings and the amazement. I was intrigued by this huge feeling of connectedness, and I wanted to learn more. I wondered if this is what people talk about with near-death experiences when they say they went through a dark tunnel and were heading to a light. In my body, I felt tugging in my forehead where I had previously felt the sensations, so it almost felt like a sinus healing. My breathing was labored but not uncomfortable. I felt a stabbing pain in the middle of my back. It distracted me for a few seconds and then it dissipated. Was this a healing in my back? My attention went back to the white energy. I felt a surge of this white energy, almost like a massive blast that would have knocked me off my feet if I had any. In body, I experienced more yawning and shifting energy. Then I was being led down a corridor that was very white with a tinge of yellow-brown, but very light in color. Still, no one was with me, yet I didn't feel alone or afraid. In body, I had more half yawns and shifting of energy, more pulling and more pressure in my forehead sinus. This made me wonder, as a soul is going through this transition after death, is there a major cleaning out of energy that they were holding onto in the physical realm? I felt as if I was getting a massive energy cleaning out, and I could feel divine white light emanating from my core going upwards. My seventh chakra was wide open, and I had more half yawns. Soon my entire being was glowing and emanating the white divine light. More yawns and the clearing of energy. There was a white divine light coming from above my head, going all the way down like a rod through my entire body and out my feet. I no longer had any semblance of an outer body or cloak around me, although I think the last time I was aware of the cloak was in the dark corridor. Next, I was nothing more than a column of divine white light that had no beginning above me and no end below me. More half yawns and a heaviness in my heart, which I knew was grief associated with my parents. It almost hurt to breathe through the heaviness. After the healing, I was sent down another corridor. Again, I was alone and knew just what to do. I looked down and saw I was wearing a new cloak. This cloak was a white, yellow, gray, almost like an eggshell paint color. The cloak was that color, and the walls of the corridor became that same color. I wondered if the different levels had different color corridors in preparation for each level. I understood, I don't know how I did, but I understood that the colors were related to vibrational frequencies in preparation for that level. And as I wrote that thought, my third chakra seized, making it difficult to breathe. I wondered what color level I was at. I immediately felt grief at not being at a higher level, even though cognitively I was not sure which level I was in. I heard and thought the words third, 3, third. Somehow I knew this meant I was relegated to the third level. The feelings that came next were very strong. I felt an immense longing and tears from my third and fourth chakra to move up in level. This color and vibrational frequency felt wrong to me. I kept saying, I know I'm not supposed to be in 3. I'm not supposed to be in the third. In my body, I was so anxious, I was almost physically sick. Are this hunger and longing what souls feel when they are desiring to be moved to a higher level? What felt to me like grief-stricken desperation, is that what souls feel like when they show up at open clinic for healing? I wanted so desperately to be moved up that tears were coming to me in the body. Is this what hell feels like, wanting something so badly that it completely permeates all thought? I felt pressure coming in from both sides of my head at the temples. The pressure lasted for about 5 seconds. I was being taken, led, shown, although no one was with me, to a tribunal or panel of spirits. The one in the middle was larger, and I assumed him to be an archangel. They were all white, a combination of human and angel in shape, Gillen and feel. The table was white. Everything was white, except for me. I saw that I was the color of the corridor, as if signifying what level I was coming from. I saw that I was a nondescript shape in the third level color of white with yellow-brown hue. I could not tell how many spirits there were on the panel, and only the one in the middle had somewhat of a distinct shape. I tried to count, and I thought I could make out 7 in total. The shapes of the spirits were smaller in stature the further they were from the middle spirit. The archangel in the middle was not Archangel Azrael, nor Archangel Michael. I was overwhelmed by the presence of these spirits, and I was humbled to be in their presence. I was equivalent to being on my knees out of reverence, if in this spirit form I had knees. The spirits told me to get up. In body, I had more half yawns as my own energy continued to be cleared. I understood that the spirits were talking about me and with me, although I was not sure if any words as I would know them were being said. It was more of an energetic or telepathic form of communication. I got the sense that the one in the middle was the ultimate decision maker. I did not sense judgment from the conversation as much as just a reviewing of facts. I want to say it wasn't judgmental because I wasn't feeling shame, but clearly they were judging. I knew exactly what was happening, and I was pleading for level 2 instead of 3. I felt a sense of heaviness in my third chakra, and my second chakra was triggered as I so desperately wanted the outcome of this panel to move me to a higher level. The conversation sounded factual, but I felt a sense of pleading on my part. In body, I had more half yawns. I was then triggered in my heart chakra and could not breathe easily. I felt pressure on the left side and back of my head. More yawning. So what was discussed during the tribunal? Some of the topics discussed were the impact I had on other people. What was my ability to love others? How selfish was I? Did I have a connection with spirit? And had I become all that my soul had intended? The middle one then communicated, not with judgment, but with facts. I heard the word second and understood that I was chosen to go to the second level. I suppose because of the life changes that I have made in the last 5 years of knowing divinity and speaking divinity's truth, the panel granted that I got to go to level 2 instead of level 3. My soul and body were immediately at rest once I heard level 2. I felt no emotions other than my desperate longing was gone. Once again, I found myself moving down a corridor. I was alone and knew exactly where I was going. The cloak I was wearing had changed. There was no more brownish yellow tint, but now it was more like a creamy white color, experienced a tightening in my throat chakra and more energy clearing yawns. I then found myself in the corridor of the second level. It was the same creamy white color that matched my new cloak. I continued heading down the corridor. I became a nondescript oval in shape. I was a presence of creamy white energy. I then understood that the colors of the corridors become murkier and less white as one went down through the levels. So this level and corridor, level 2, were feeling pretty good to me. At the end of the corridor, I entered an immense open area. I can't even describe how immense it was, but there were no visible walls or boundaries. The area was full of souls. Everything in this immense space was the same color as my cloak and the corridor. This looked and felt just like the Cathedral of Souls that I had seen in past meditations and while working with clients. The shapes of the spirits were more distinct than how I had seen myself in the corridor. They looked to be half spirit, half in a body, like a human. I sensed what I had seen before in my readings for others. These souls had a purpose, had connections with others, and were in community. In my body, my heart chakra was triggered, and I was grateful for that which I was being shown. I knew that there was a level above, which was reserved for what I thought was the holiest of holies. I also knew that there were levels of different color matched by vibrational frequency below me. I had seen the colors of the second and third levels. I was then shown the colors of the other lower levels. The fourth was browner than the third, was darker brown with a bit of black haze. The sixth was very murky brown-black, and the seventh was nothing but black opaque, so murky that one couldn't see through it. I sensed that my time in this realm was complete, and very quickly I was back outside at the foot of God. How interesting that the entire time the only spirits I spoke with were the members of the tribunal, and then when I was at the second level. Yet I never felt alone or lonely. I never felt frightened. I know that I followed Archangel Azrael into the corridor initially, yet I never saw him after that. Upon further reflection, I did not see Archangel Azrael after I entered the dark corridor. That left me wondering if Archangel Azrael was truly just the guide at the moment of death, who starts a soul down the dark corridor, heading toward the predetermined level of the Cathedral of Souls. So that's my NDE story. In conclusion, Nancy Evans Bush, the President Emeritus of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, stated, "Most near-death survivors say they don't think there is a God. They know there is a God." So thank you for listening. Again, if you've experienced an NDE or know of the intimate experiences of someone else who has, please feel free to call in and share what you know. If you want to call, please call 1-516-453-9162. Make sure to press 1 on your phone if you would like to get into the queue. And I would like to welcome my friend and fellow lightworker, Linda Dierks, to the show. Some of you have heard her speak already, and she is always adding a great deal to our conversation. So I'm pleased that she could join us tonight. Good evening, Linda.
Hi, good evening, Ruth. It's so lovely to hear your story. It is inspiring, and it's lovely to be here with you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Hey, Linda, are you on speakerphone?
I will check.
Okay, because I'm just hearing some feedback, so that's why I'm asking.
Okay, hi.
That's better.
Does that sound better? I have a story that I could share with you that I experienced recently.
Please.
I have been doing some work for people, for survivors who are going through the transition of important people in their lives. And for a woman that I know, I recently helped guide them through their mother's transition. And she passed, about 2 weeks ago. And in studying energy and going through these experiences with people who are making their transition, I find that people, when they do make their exit, their energy typically will exit through their crown chakra, which is, of course, their connection with their higher power, and, they're in that state of mind at that point, or through their right heart, which is their relationship with themselves. The energy will exit from, of course, from their lower chakras and work up. And at this stage, I couldn't feel any energy at all in the woman's lower chakras, and I could still feel a very faint energy in her crown and in her right heart, knowing that she was, nearing time of making her transition. But I also could sense a small amount of energy in her left heart, which represents her relationship with others. And what this was telling me is that there was a reluctance on her part to let go because of relationship with other people in her life. So I advised them that if there was any unfinished business, this was the time to talk about that and to close that out. But more so to emphasize to their mother that her role, the mother, was complete. As a mother, and the mother and child connection is so intense. But just to reinforce that her role was complete, that she'd done a wonderful job, that they were fine, and it was her time to release and let go. And at that point, I could feel the energy in her left heart fade away, and what remaining energy was in her crown and her right heart almost faded completely. They thought that she had rallied, but she in fact passed several hours later, and it was just a matter of just reading her energy as it exited. And I think this is one of the most rewarding pieces of this work that I have encountered, because it is just so useful to the people who are working with a loved one who is passing. In addition to the energy and feeling it, feeling it release and move away, I was also able to read the state of mind of the person as she passed from confusion and then into acceptance and then into bliss and a welcome. And at the final point when she let go, I didn't see a tunnel, but I saw a bright light, like a halo in the background behind her silhouette, and definitely a lovely light there.
Yeah, that's
so
beautiful.
I wanted to share that experience. Yeah, it was, and I would love to do more of this work. As I said, of all the work that I've done, I think that I found this the most rewarding. there was something that you said earlier also that I was going to make a comment upon. I've had a couple of reports, firsthand reports from people saying that they've had a light visit them and then go away a few days before they pass. And I happen to think, well, maybe that is the light of Ariel coming to visit them and check in and go in and out. What do you think about that when you mentioned Ariel earlier?
Or Azrael? I was talking about Azrael.
I'm sorry, Israel.
Yeah, so I had asked Azrael, like, how soon do you show up before the person actually transitions? And if memory serves, I said, like, do you show up a week early, a month early? And it was like, no. And it was like, do you show up a day early? And it was like, yeah. So when my dad passed, the day before I walked into his place, and there was a bean in the upper right-hand corner, and I was looking at it, and it was not Azrael, because I was really keen in on, okay, is this, I knew we were leading up to death, but I didn't know how close we were. But seeing that bean in the corner, and it was not Azrael, it was a different bean. But then as we got closer to the time of Dad passing, within, the next morning, there were 3 beans in the corner of the room, and the night that he passed, there were 5 or 6. And literally, the minute that my dad passed, all of those beans were gone. So it was just fascinating to me, and I wanted to experience Archangel Azrael. I wanted to really feel his presence when my dad passed, and I didn't. I noticed my grandparents, my dad's mom and dad, and this other being, and then a couple of other ones that I didn't recognize, and I didn't recognize Azrael. So I was a little disappointed. I know it sounds stupid, at my father's passing, to be disappointed I didn't see a particular archangel, but I really kind of was. So I'm anxious to learn more about all that.
And as you do, please let us all know. There was another point that you made, and I thought I would bring up. As this woman passed, I could see her being greeted by other beings, and just telepathically knew that they were loved ones that were greeting her as she passed over. And I think you mentioned that also, and I thought that was lovely.
I have definitely experienced that. When my friend Sylvia died in the hospital, her parents had been waiting outside, who had passed years and years ago. Her parents were waiting outside the hospital room. I met with a gentleman, very kind gentleman, who was dying of lung cancer. And when I walked into his home, the first thing I noticed was that he and his wife were not alone, that there was a slew of beings in their home in the upper left-hand corner, and they were all cheering for him. They were buds and family members, and they were cheering for him. It was so interesting to watch him. He passed away about a week later. But to watch him in spirit, because he was in spirit partly out of his body and communicating with these other beings, and then he would go back into his body a little more. It was really intriguing to watch. But I guess all that to be saying, I absolutely believe at the moment of death, we are not alone, that we've got beings that are waiting and watching and really there for us.
I know my father passed a little over 2 years ago, and I often experience him with me, especially when I'm engaging in activities that we did a lot together, like hiking and outdoors activities. Have you felt your father close to you at times since he passed?
Yes, the morning that he passed, so he passed about 15 minutes after midnight, and then we stayed with my mom. And that afternoon, I had to find some normalcy. So I went and ran a couple of errands. And It was a snowy day here in Colorado, so the visibility was really poor for drivers. And I was in a parking lot of PetSmart, and I was walking behind a car that put on its reverse lights, and I thought, what an idiot, Ruth, what are you doing? And I thought at that moment, I can't fathom if I would die hours after helping my father pass. And it was just one of those snarky, absurd moments. And I heard my dad say, Ruth? And I said, yes, Dad. And he said, thank you. And I said, you're welcome, because I knew it was about helping him pass. And I said, you're welcome. And I said, see, you can come back and talk to me. And I said, I love you. Oh, he said, yes, how about that? Which is exactly what my dad would say. And I said, I love you. And he said, I love you too. So that was the day my dad passed. And that was in February. And then this last week, I had reason to spend the night with my mother. She had taken a fall, and I didn't want her spending the night alone. So I was in their apartment while my mother was sleeping. My father shows up in spirit, sitting on the chair that he sat in for a million years. And we just had a really sweet time. It was interesting because typical as to how spirit presents to me, there weren't words that I could audibly say, but I got like telepathic feelings and knowingness and ideas rather than real words. So he's been around, and I know he's been around my mother. Because I walked in the other morning and said hi, and she said, your father was just here. And she said he woke her up and said, Elaine, don't you think it's time for you to get up now? Which is so what my father would say. So he's been around.
Well, that brings up something else that, for those of us that don't connect as vividly as you do, this is an exercise that others might be interested in. In psychokinesis. If I hold my father's jackknife in my hand, then I can feel his energy really intensely through that knife that he carried in his pocket. Much of his life.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I can do that. So if others are want to try the same thing, if they want to hold an object that was dear to someone who's passed over, they might, feel that energy and connect. Are there other people who would like to chime in, or would you like me to share another story?
I'm not seeing from Claudia that we've got anybody else in the queue, so why don't you go ahead?
Well, this is not a near-death experience, but it's something that was really unique. And you spoke earlier about, those of us who kind of work with one foot on the other side of the veil much of the time. Mm-hmm. I had a circumstance where I had a thought in my mind that there was a possibility that I might be looking at my own passing. And I think for those of us who deal in different sides of the consciousness, I had absolutely no fear. And it was the first time I'd had this realization, and I thought, wow, I think the ultimate freedom in life is to not be afraid to die. It was actually, it felt like a relief and almost welcome. Obviously, I was not on a death path, but I was out in the mountains and communicating with my guide, and I had this intense connection that rarely happens to me outside of meditation, of just being in complete release and expansiveness and this enormous connection, like a dimensional shift. And thinking that I was leaving physical form, I looked at everything in this intense gratitude. We feel gratitude, but this was just far beyond that. It was looking at every physical thing, every relationship, every concept, every gift in our life with just this explosion. That's all I can think of is an explosion of gratitude. And I saw this enormous universal energy and the absolute connectedness of all things. Now, every New Year's, rather than make a resolution, I usually try to pick out a point of consciousness that I want to have a deeper connection to. And my point this year was more recognition of the connectedness of all things and being able to see this universal field and the actual blending of all the energies and the connectedness was just enormous. But beyond that, I sat and I asked my guide, I said, what is life? And my guide said, life is paper dolls. Do you remember paper dolls?
Go on.
Okay. He said, life is paper dolls. He said, it's pretty and it's fun, but it's peripheral, it's flimsy, and it's throwaway. That this is just a passage that we're going through in our successive states of consciousness in this ongoing cycle. So I was intrigued, and I said, well, then what is the purpose of life? And my guide said, love, and came back again and said, love and the degree to which we can touch others.
Ooh.
And I just thought that was so beautiful. Love and the degree to which we can touch others. So as all of us continue on this path and what we can share with others, this is the fulfillment, the satisfaction of our life purpose of being here.
Wow, I love that. Love and the degree to which we can touch others. Is that what you said?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Love and the degree to which we can touch others. That's the purpose of our being here in physical form. So that gave me goosebumps just retelling that story.
Yeah, exactly. That is gorgeous. So do you have anything else to add on to that, or can I segue with that?
Nope, you go ahead.
Okay, so the other day, I've been writing my second book, which has to do with life and death and beyond, as the spiritual divinity have shared it with me, including this information that we're talking about here tonight. And one of the things, oddly, that dawned on me was we talk about the afterlife. And I thought, what a misnomer that is, because when you use the words afterlife to talk about whatever happens after you die, that's assuming that the most important thing is life, right? If all of that is called the afterlife, then really the only important thing in the room here is life and living. But then I was thinking, if we believe in reincarnation and life after life after life, but if you spend maybe hundreds of years before you come back in, you really are spending more time in the ethereal realm than you are living on Earth. Like a gazillion more years in the ethereal realm than you are living on the Earth. So I'm not sure that calling it the afterlife actually makes sense, because life is it's the middle of the Oreo. It's the thin little bit of frosting in between all of this other outside realm stuff. So I'm coming up with a new term for afterlife, because I don't think it fits.
Well, you can look at it also from on the flip side. If you were in consciousness and not in physical form, and you wrote the same line, would you call it the pre-life?
Right, I know. I know. It's just
I don't know.
Wrong.
It's you and I both see energy as a cycle, and and the death process is just a completion of that cycle, and you're actually returning to your original state.
Right.
Is part of that cycle. It's not, you're going back to your original state and then preparing for another time of reemergence. But it's just part of the cycle.
So two thoughts come to mind on that. One is when we are in that place where we're in the ethereal realm, we've already been in a body and now we're in the ethereal realm, I was thinking we really are so much more genuine as a soul when we're in the ethereal realm. Because in my mind, the way I see it, we don't have the distractions. We don't have the makeup. We don't have the clothes. We don't have the status. We don't have, the lying and the greed and all of those other things that we might use as a facade to cover up our soul. We really are just in the form of I am. Does that make sense, Linda?
I do, and I think, when we're in a state of pure consciousness as opposed to being in physical form, we're in a state of very high frequency.
Right.
And when we're in a state of high frequency, that high frequency is one of the highest frequencies is love. So if we're living in a constant state of love, and if we're in a constant state of high frequency, then we're not being fogged by ego, stress, all
right.
of these things that are pulling us down out of that high frequency. So I think as we pass over, we may fall into very kind of a structure to our lives, but one that is more blissful because we aren't encumbered with low frequency attitudes and energies.
Right. Right. Well, so what's interesting is you were giving me a beautiful segue to the week when we talk about the Cathedral of Souls. So that's not next week. Next week we're going to talk about the panel, the tribunal, the panel at the tribunal and what they're looking at. But the week after that, we're going to talk about the Cathedral of Souls and talking about the frequencies that souls are in the ethereal realm, and how that looks in conjunction with the Cathedral of Souls. So I'm excited about having that conversation in a couple weeks. But one of the other thoughts that I had was about death, the actual moment of death, because all of our lives in the physical realm, somehow in the back of our minds, we're thinking about our moment of death coming up, right? I mean, that's why we put on our seatbelt, because we don't want to speed up that moment of death, or, why we look both ways before we cross the road, because we don't want, death is always in our minds, whether we realize it or not. And one of the things I realized is that death is really one moment. It's not what built up to it. It's not what's coming after it. But death itself is one moment in time. I don't know why that struck me, but it really struck me.
I go back to what I was saying earlier about the ultimate freedom in life is not to be afraid to die. One of the thoughts that I had, for many of us, for you and this huge emergence that you had, and coming into your new skills and you're in this new purpose in your life after Sylvia's death. Me in my life, when I came out of what I call the dark ages, after having cancer and multiple tragedies over a number of years, we experienced a reemergence. And if we could look at our impending death as being just another of those types of just great emergence in our lives, there's just so much burdensome attitude that's been layered on the death process. And, I think that as we come into these new movements, this is our opportunity to implant new ideas. Our attitudes about death and beliefs are all learned attitudes that have been fed to us by old conditioning and, religious doctrine and so forth. And, often too much of the time, it's confused with fear or control about what happens with you after you die. And the more that we can broadcast our message, the more that we're helping to overcome, that old conditioning about belief around death.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And one point, it was actually this last summer, I was sitting with Divine Mother, and she was explaining to me that she really wants me to be teaching other people about the archangels and about what happens after you die. So here I am. It only took me, 10 months to get it pulled together, but I'm here.
Well, I have another short story I could share. We have a couple of minutes left. This collective consciousness that I work with, that you so appropriately term my posse. I'm riding with my posse.
Yes.
Back at the beginning of the winter, I started to be able to identify the different individual entities that were in this collective consciousness. And I was somewhat disturbed at the time to find out that my mother was one of them, because we loved each other dearly and we had an okay relationship, but not a wonderful relationship. And I discovered in taking a class recently that I can actually do a reading on my mother based on the energy of her current life, of when she was in physical form. And I did a reading on my mother and saw some of the things that triggered the fears that she had in her life. And a lot of it was due to suppression in our mother's generations, not being able to express as fully as they might like to, and how much of her fear was based on her desire that I be able to achieve more. And now I can see that as part of being part of my collective consciousness, that she's starting to express herself through me and work off. So I'm helping her work off frustrations that she wasn't able to relieve in her lifetime because of women's positions, a generation ago. And she is helping me by pulling me into higher consciousness. So I'm seeing more of a synchronistic relationship there, one of great benefit to both of us, as opposed to one that may have been, less than ideal.
But that's interesting, Linda, because maybe it was just the timing of things, but your mother died before you were able to figure that out.
Yes, and that we can continue to heal relationships after our loved ones have passed over. And learning that was there's been a couple of circumstances in my life when I've been able to, release some huge karmic loads and felt a great infusion of energy coming in. And this was one of them. It was a great experience, and it came as one of those little aha moments, but it just provided that shift in the way that I look at things, that brought me another couple of rungs up the ladder. Amazing how these things happen, isn't it, Ruth?
It is amazing. And good for you for being open to that, really. Healing, yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who would like to know that they can still heal relationships after a loved one has passed over, and the state of the relationship when that person passed from physical into form into consciousness, that the relationship doesn't end there.
And I completely agree with you. And for some reason, I was just being shown that sometimes our loved ones will come see us on the astral at night, on the astral plane. And what you think might be a dream with that loved one might really be them in spirit visiting you on the astral. So just be aware that sometimes the healing of past relationships can happen on the astral plane. You don't even have to be aware of it, and it's happening.
Now, weren't you talking the other day, or was it something that I read in one of your books, about dreams that you have or that are actually more than dreams?
Right.
We know we have our dreaming state, and then we have a state that actually goes beyond that dreaming state. It's a good point of paying attention to what might be happening on that astral plane and with other relationships.
Exactly. And what a gift that those of us that are aware of energy, gift that we get to sit back and observe all of this. The healing that can come in for us just keeps coming, kind of in waves. So anybody who's listening out there, if you're thinking about learning about energy, I really encourage you to take the deep dive, because it's amazing what you can learn and experience with healing that you wouldn't have known otherwise. So, hey, Linda, I've got a couple.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to sign off then tonight, Ruth, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. Okay, bye. So just a couple of announcements. One, I wanted to let folks know there is an association called IANDS, and it stands for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And they are having their yearly conference. This year it's August 30 through September 2nd, and it is in Bellevue, Washington. The title of this one is called Explore the Extraordinary, After Effects of Near-Death Experiences. And I've been asked to be there and provide a meditation for the folks one of the mornings. So it would be great if you are interested in near-death studies. You might want to find your way to Bellevue, Washington in August. Secondly, wanted to invite you all to join our Facebook community for International Angels Network, and the website is www.internationalangelsnetwork.com. And lastly, in 2 weeks, May 24th, we'll have a guest, Ward Barkafer Jr. He's the author of Beyond the Veil to Heaven. It's available through Amazon.com, and it chronicles visitations from his deceased wife, Suzette, and she talks freely about the Cathedral of Souls and what it's like to live there. So if you would like to purchase the book on Amazon and read it prior to our call with Ward, that would be great. So it's truly been an honor to be among the hosts of International Angels Network, and I look very forward to walking with Spirit and you next Thursday, May 17, 2018. So God bless and good night.